Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. And before we get on to the main event, we're going to be kicking off proceedings, courtesy of Stop Sinking Me here in the Shimakaze, with a very short clip, just highlighting exactly what you can expect to happen when you're still using Tier 1 tactics at Tier 10. There's a choice of 3 different sets of torpedoes on the Shimakaze. There's the 20km range noob tubes that the ship comes with, which nobody should be using because they can be seen from low Earth orbit. Then you've got the suicide torps, the Type F3, that only have an 8km range but are very, very fast. Stop Sinking Me, however, is going with the Type 93 Mod 3s, which are the ones that most Shimakaze captains should be using. They have a 12km range, but they do nearly 24,000 damage. And they have a pretty good speed of 67 knots. They don't reload quite as quickly as the Type F3s, but they're a nice balance between effectiveness, firepower, reload, and range. Stop Sinking Me isn't really expecting to hit anything here. The first set of torpedoes were launched around the side of the island on his right, hopefully to interfere with whoever's flipping the cap over there. The other 2 sets of torpedoes were just launched in the general direction of the enemy ships that are visible on the far side of the islands as he peels off to start flipping this capture point for his team. 2 enemy cruisers, the Alaska and the Worcester, both of which come with the hydroacoustic search consumable, neither of which are using it, despite the fact that there's a cap point being flipped by a destroyer that they can't see at around about 10 kilometers. Both of which are sailing in straight lines. Because hey, if it works at Tier 1, it should work at every tier, yeah? But there are no torpedoes at Tier 1. This is why sailing in zigzag patterns became a thing. Oh well. Maybe they'll learn. One day. Just not today. Speaking of learning, we're going to move on to today's main event. This, in the Japanese Tier 10 battleship, the Yamato, is Leisure Shoot, and I believe he's using the Pi camo. Very, very nice camo. Has some very nice bonuses, but it's very difficult to get a hold of, unless you get lucky with crates. Anyway, Leisure Shoot is in a domination battle here on the mountain range map. I believe that this is a North American server game, although I'm not 100% sure, but judging by the chat, which is quite active, although not yet, but it will be, and the fact that most people appear to be speaking pretty good English, that does lead me to believe that this is a North American server game, because they are very chatty on the North American server. Now then, how can I put this? Leisure Suit sent this replay in because he was enormously proud of the result, and he absolutely should be, because he is going to get a very, very good result. Hopefully that's not going to be too much of a spoiler. The reason that I'm showing this particular battle isn't because he got a good result, it's because he got a good result despite his efforts rather than because of them. Now, Leisure Shoot, please don't take this the wrong way, but you did things in this battle that I often feature here on YouTube, but normally it's other players in the Yamato doing the kind of things that you were doing right before they got bitch slapped into oblivion. So please take this as constructive criticism, and hopefully anybody else watching who's hoping to get the Yamato will also learn something from this, because there were so many occasions in this battle when you should have died, and if not for the enemies that you were facing being, how can we put this, not very good, downright terrible in fact, or perhaps just being panicked, there is no way you would have survived this battle, let alone ended up with the result that you got. So please take this in the spirit in which it was intended, as constructive criticism. And everyone else, go easy on them in the comments, okay? Everybody has to learn somewhere. So, to begin with, let's just pay attention to the friendly Shimakaze, who's been extremely brave this early in the match by attempting to flip capture point Charlie before he knows where the enemy radars are. Meanwhile, Leisure Shoot has a beautiful Conqueror to shoot at over there, and he has the armour piercing loaded, which he should do, And sure enough, the friendly Shimakaze has just been radared by the Moskva that popped up at point blank range. He's attempting to divert to get an island between himself and the Moskva and the Goliath, but it was the enemy Shimakaze, as yet undetected, whose torpedoes got him. Leisure Shoot's initial salvo completely missed that Conqueror. I did think he was given a little bit too much lead there, but he's reloading for a second go. Meanwhile, the friendly Stalingrad, who's taking Billy Big Steps away from the enemy ships to the north, has just fired off his radar. He's spotted the Shimakaze, but that Shimakaze already has torpedoes in the water, and Leisure Shoot is very lucky there. That one would have smacked him in the bows if it hadn't run out of steam, and would almost certainly have caused some flooding. On the other side of the map, the team's Yugumo has just been gunned down by the enemy Fletcher, so the team are now 100% in a destroyer-free zone. Both of them have been sunk. The enemy team have yet to suffer a casualty. Some high explosive spam coming in there from the enemy Goliath, but for the moment at least, Leisure Shoot has managed to go undetected. Although not for long, because he is charging full speed into a cap circle that was just flipped by an enemy Shimakaze. And he is once again spotted. Now, he's pinging the map there for the Stalingrad to his rear, who is turning around and coming back up here to support him. But the reason he's pinging the map is because he wants the Stalingrad to use his radar to spot the Shimakaze. Something that the Stalingrad did earlier while Leisure Shoot was shooting at the Conqueror, so Leisure Shoot wasn't paying attention to chat and doesn't realise that the Stalingrad's radar is on cooldown. Hopefully he is paying attention to chat now, and I believe he is, because the Stalingrad is telling him it's on cooldown. I literally just used it. Conscious of the fact that he is sailing straight into a Shimakaze that he can't see, but he can see his torpedoes, he starts slowing down and attempting to take some cover behind the small island just up ahead. Unfortunately, the Shimakaze took that into consideration. Leisure Shoot eats 2 of those torpedoes, loses half of his health, suffers a double flood, which forces him to use his damage control. He's getting spammed with high explosive from the Moskva, which isn't a problem. The Moskva's high explosive DPM is terrible, and I'm happy to see that he's loaded the armor piercing for the Goliath, because the Goliath is giving him a nice flat broadside, and absolutely deserved that. But there's the Shimakaze. The Shimakaze has just committed a grievous error of judgment. His torpedoes are on cooldown, he's allowed himself to get within spotting range of a Yamato, and the Stalingrad's radar is back up. And the Stalingrad doesn't need to be asked. So, Leisure Shoot and the Yamato, the Stalingrad and a Hindenburg from the other side of the map are now all shooting at that Shimakaze. The good news is, he's not going to survive the encounter. The bad news is that the combination of high explosive shells from the Shimakaze and the Moskva up ahead had set 3 fires, and Leisure Shoot's damage control is on cooldown. Note the 2 fires in the midships section, one of which has just gone out. This tells me that Leisure Shoot does not have the fire prevention skill, so he actually has 4 possible fire sources on board his ship. It's possible at this stage that if that Moskva had not switched to AP and instead had continued to spam the high explosive despite the terrible damage per minute output, the fires would have killed Leisure Shoot. Although the Stalingrad did not continue to fire high explosive, so I guess we'll never know. Leisure Shoot is tucking himself in behind the island here, give himself some breathing space, and the Moskva has been forced to switch his fire to the Stalingrad. Meanwhile, that Montana over there is looking like a very, very juicy target. Unfortunately, the friendly Hindenburg has just gone down, and that big-ass smokescreen ahead of the Montana is going to be the enemy Venezia. Not that one, that's the remainder of the Shimakaze smokescreen. Yeah, that one over there. A triple citadel on the Montana, and there's the high caliber award. Now the remainder of the Shimakaze smokescreen should have allowed him to go undetected, but the Moskva is using his radar. With some forward momentum remaining, he slips in behind the island, rendering him immune to any counter-battery fire from either the Montana or Venezia, but they still have to deal with the Moskva around the corner of this island. Although he's more than 2 kilometres away, because if he was closer than 2 kilometres he would be automatically detected. But it's here where I think Leisure Shoot could definitely use the benefit of some advice. The Moskva, backing up, has the armour piercing loaded. He's waiting exactly for this moment as Leisure Shoot noses around the corner and he unloads. Leisure Shoot should have died here if the Moskva had known where to aim, but he doesn't. He's aiming for the belt. And Leisure Shoot's belt armour is angled enough that all of those 220mm shells bounce off harmlessly. Unfortunately, while the Yamato and the Musashi and Shikishima have the reputation of being able to blast clean through the bows of any ship in the game as if they weren't even there, thanks to their 18-inch or higher gun caliber, that's not strictly true when it comes to ships like the Moskva. The upper part of the Moskva's bows are only 25mm thick, but the lower part of the bows are 50mm thick, and cannot therefore be overmatched, which makes it a bit of a crapshoot when you're shooting at a nose-tanking Moskva, even with 18-inch armour piercing shells. What he should be shooting at were the Moskva's gun turrets, which are notoriously fragile. The Moskva has another go. Does some damage, but he's still not aiming in the right place. Leisure Shoot starts angling in, but he's not angling in nearly enough, and if this Moskva had known where to shoot, Leisure Shoot would be dead. He's now aiming directly for the 50mm section of the Moskva's bows. Scores 2 hits. Unsurprisingly, both of them ricochet off. The only thing that saves Leisure Shoot here is that the Moskva starts shooting at the Stalingrad instead. Let me show you where the Moskva should have been aiming, and if he had been, Leisure Shoot wouldn't have sent this replay in because he would have been dead long ago. Here's the Yamato's armour profile, 32mm of bow plating, which means in order to overmatch that you require guns with a calibre of at least 18.1 inches. The Moskva doesn't have that, but it doesn't need that thanks to a feature of the way the Yamato's armour is angled. You see how it narrows in considerably towards the bows just ahead of the gun turrets. What that means is this cheek plating here, from this angle underneath the gun turrets, is more or less effectively flat. So you don't need to overmatch it. Because it's flat, you can just punch right through it. And on the far side of that cheek plate is the Yamato's citadel. If the Moskva had been aiming there, Leisure Shoot would have been dead the second he came around the corner of the island. When you're facing anything other than another Yamato, Musashi or Shikishima, and you're in a Yamato, you should be pointing your nose straight in, not angling your belt armour like the Moskva is doing, which is causing Leisure Shoot's 18.1-inch shells to continue to ricochet. If the Yamato does that, and you aim below its turrets, you will kill it with sufficiently high caliber AP. The Yamato should always nose straight in when attempting to bow tank. It should definitely not be doing this. He was saying to the Stalingrad, you go right, I'll go left. You see where he's aiming at the Moskva here? Right under the front turret. That is exactly where the Moskva should have been firing armour piercing at him. And if he had been, Leisure Shoot would be dead. And judging by the fact that those gun turrets are pointing straight back at him, I think the Moskva was about to do it. Fortunately, Leisure Shoot got the shots off first, the Moskva died, and he didn't. So it's 3 versus 3, but the enemy team have 2 caps, and therefore a points lead. The only other surviving ship is the friendly Montana down to the south, who's been receiving considerable amounts of shit in chat. Because for the best part of the last 6 or 7 minutes, he's just been slowly reversing away from the Venezia, Conqueror and Montana, bearing down on him. To a degree, I can kind of sympathise with the Montana, because if he turns to run, he's going to, at one point or another, end up giving broadside to a Conqueror, a Venezia and a Montana. But it's been quite a while now, and there are a lot of islands down there. You'd think that at some point he would have been able to turn around and disengage, but, well, he hasn't. And there's the Montana. Despite the triple citadel that he suffered earlier, he has managed to get some health back. Unfortunately, the Venezia, who would have definitely been a kill, popped up just as Leisure Shoot fired, but the Stalingrad's got him targeted and has managed to take him out, so good stuff. Sadly, despite having the nice big fat broadside of Montana to shoot at, it looks like the shots went at the superstructure, because all he managed to get were 2 over-penetrations. Oh well, if at first you don't succeed, try again. There goes the friendly Montana. Venezia's torpedoes got him, so there's a flesh wound award for the Venezia. And some more damage, but again not quite enough. He's managed to get the rear turret out, and he's safe from fire from the Conqueror for at least the moment. He seems to be shooting at the Stalingrad. And again, he's just chipping away at the Montana's health here. I was getting a little worried that he was exposing the cheek armour again, but he is now nosing straight in towards the Montana. So I began to wonder if the performance against the Moskva earlier was just a fluke, because he can overmatch the Montana's bows no problem. The Montana, on the other hand, cannot overmatch his, so right now he's doing pretty much exactly the right thing. Nose straight in towards the Montana. He may take some hits on the superstructure, which will do some damage, but there's absolutely no way he's going to take catastrophic damage, particularly since the Montana isn't even aiming his guns at him. And there we go, he's killed him. The Montana, obviously realising that there wasn't an awful lot of point in firing at a bow-tanking Yamato, switched his fire to the Stalingrad instead. The Stalingrad, who briefly threatened to flip that cap circle to the north and is now doing his level best to put as much distance between himself and the cap circle as he possibly can. I mean, the enemy team are 60, 70 points ahead, and that gap is only growing larger as each second passes because they have 2 cap circles. If they do not kill this Conqueror, they need the cap circles to win. Fortunately, the Conqueror isn't exactly making things difficult for Leisure Shoot. Equally fortunately, there's not a huge amount that the Conqueror's super heal can do against Citadel damage like that. Even more fortunately, Leisure Shoot is doing it again, but the Conqueror is not firing armour piercing. Oh man, there are so... Leisure Shoot, please take this in the spirit in which it was intended, but there are so many different ways that you should have died in this game. The fact that you didn't was more down to luck and ignorance on behalf of the enemy team. Actually, you know what? You should ram him. That would win. He's the last enemy ship. The Stalingrad's still alive. In fact, the Stalingrad was even telling him in chat, ram him. And to his credit, I don't think Leisure Shoot needed to be told. The Conqueror has just realised. You can see the panic. Too little, too late. Yeah, now that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. That I did like. 313,000 damage. No Kraken, sadly, only the 4 kills, but you should definitely be proud of that result. I mean, clearly you were, that's why you sent the replay in the first place. But if you take my advice and the spirit in which it was intended, hopefully you should be able to see results like that a lot more often, because that's the whole point of me putting this video up today. I'm not here to mock you, I'm here to try to help you, because while that was a great result, 313,000 damage and 3,500 base XP, it could so very easily have not been a great result. So please take the advice from today's video in the spirit in which it was intended, learn from it, and let's see more results like that more often in the future. And I hope everybody else learned a thing or two from watching this, as well as we're entertained by it, because that's the whole point after all. That's it for today. Take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.